DOGE, the newly minted brainchild of Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, is not only committed to slashing waste and nonsensical spending out of Washington, D.C., but the Department of Government Efficiency is also determined to end programs the nation's taxpayers are unknowingly funding. That's correct. You and your family fund, with your monthly income taxes, things like Centerstone's LGBTQIA+ family support program. We pay $850,000 per year to ensure that U.S. military families can properly, quote, affirm the gender identities of their children. You heard me correctly. On a larger scale, we're spending nearly $500 million, $490 million to be exact. That's right, $500 million on making sure your school is diversity hiring, $170 million on DEI mental health initiatives. The list goes on and on and on. Yesterday in Mar-a-Lago, when speaking to reporters, President-elect Donald Trump made it clear that the cutting goal is around $2 trillion. Why don't we take a listen?
I call it the years of stupidity, the decades of stupidity. Through the Department of Government Efficiency, Elon Musk has been working very hard with various people, including Vivek. We're going to eliminate hundreds of billions of dollars of waste and fraud. And I can only tell you, I'll give you a little early report, they're finding things that you wouldn't even believe. So we're looking to save maybe $2 trillion.
Well, the House DOGE caucus held its inaugural meeting on Tuesday, and DOGE is calling all of the BS out. Joining us now is Congressman Michael Cloud of Texas's 27th District. Sir, we appreciate your joining. Walk us through what happened in this inaugural caucus meeting. What was the agenda? What was it like? What was discussed? Give us sort of an inside scoop, sir.
Yeah, today, of course, as the first effort in any agenda, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of excitement. Certainly what Elon and Vivek and President Trump are bringing to the table as far as the oomph behind what's really been a goal allegedly of Congress for quite some time, but haven't seemed to make it across the finish line when it comes to finding cuts and savings for the American people. But today, as we come together, it's the DOGE caucus, certainly a lot of enthusiasm and really laying out kind of the first steps of how we're going to gather the information we need, how we're going to prioritize, how we're going to work together. It was a bipartisan meeting, so that was comforting to see that we're having some broad-based support for this. This is certainly something the American people are behind. And the question, of course, right now is how are we going to set in the mechanisms to make sure that this just isn't a talking point for Congress, but we actually deliver on the promise?
Well, Congressman, obviously $2 trillion is a massive goal. It's lofty, but it's certainly something the American people desire. They want you guys to achieve this. And what is really the first step to doing this? This seems to be the big question that we're dealing with, because you certainly have a lot of options on the table. You specifically, sir, focused a lot on DEI throughout the last few months or so. What do you believe low-hanging fruit first steps could be for DOGE?
Sure. You know, we talk about $2 trillion, and that can seem astronomical, but when you look at it, that puts us right about pre-COVID spending levels. The government has grown dramatically throughout COVID and has remained at that level ever since then. And, you know, nobody in America goes back and thinks we had a lean, mean fighting machine of a federal government pre-COVID. So there's a lot of room to begin to find the waste, fraud, abuse, error. One of the things that's exciting about people like Elon and Vivek being a part of this is the technology apparatus they can bring to it. I remember coming from a small business, and I felt like I took a 20-year step back in time to have to use the tools you were given in the house to kind of operate as an office. So there's a lot that can be done throughout every agency. Virtually every single agency in this federal government has far exceeded their mandate and their original purpose. And as Congress, it behooves us, and it's really our responsibility, not just to think our job is done when we send the money to go accomplish a task. It's our job to make sure it's actually accomplishing what it's sent to do and doing it in an efficient manner for the American people. And so we can go agency by agency by agency to find savings. One of the big things is just to get the federal government back to work. I think the latest numbers are something like 95% of the federal government is teleworking, and if the number grows even more if you don't count the people who are actually taking care of the facility, the empty building. And so getting the federal government back to working for the American people, going through every single agency, finding places to save, that's going to get us a long way down the process of getting this federal government off the backs of the American people and working for them.
Congressman, do you think this is a program and this mission of cutting this waste in federal spending is something that you could actually see Democrats hopping on board with specifically? And how do you think the mechanism, obviously when you get into the nitty-gritty of what specific programs or different ways you can cut, do you think there will be different types of disagreement from certain members pushing back on, hang on, we don't want this specific program getting cut. What about this one? How do you anticipate there will be reconciliation to make sure there's agreement on how different members go about figuring out where the areas are to cut?
That's part of the process of what we're starting with right now, obviously, in the first meeting of the DOGE caucus and the different groups that are working on this. One of the things I think that President Trump has done very well that's going to be very helpful is setting out a bold goal and agenda. When we have a figure and a number to work with, that lets us know what we're working toward, that $2 trillion figure, getting as close to it as possible. When we don't have a goal to work for, you're always going to find a reason why we can't make this cut. And it's kind of like going to the gym in a sense, where, I wish I could bench 250 pounds, but are we willing to pay the price to get there? Well, Congress, it's easy to come out here and to tweet about, or X, I guess is what we're calling it now, about DOGE, to put out different statements about where we need to find savings, but ultimately it's going to come down to the tough votes. But I think if we have a clear goal and the American people understand what we're trying to accomplish, because of the bully pulpit, President Trump getting out there and giving a clear vision for what we're trying to accomplish as a Congress, I think the American people are going to be with us as we begin to make the decisions. And they understand they have to make their budget work every month. And they, I think, can understand us coming together as a Congress and saying we've got to make the tough choices that really get the government doing what it's supposed to be doing and not meddling in the lives of the American people.
We're speaking with Congressman Michael Cloud from Texas's 27th Congressional District. Sir, the clock is ticking on a possible government shutdown. Obviously, a funding bill needs to be passed by Friday. There have been significant and, I would say, palpable frustration among certain House Republicans over the process, specifically the fact that as of Tuesday noon, no text available for the funding bill has been made available needed to avert a shutdown. You wrote on X that this was turning into the typical D.C. swamp Christmas tree, a CR product, and process this terrible raises real questions about the next year. What about the process has left sort of a bad taste in your mouth up until this point, Congressman?
Well, for weeks and weeks and weeks, there was an understanding that we needed to maybe bridge the gap into the Trump administration. Let's do what we can to keep the government running into the Trump administration. Something along the lines of a clean CR might be appropriate, and an understanding that those folks ravaged in areas recently devastated by hurricanes as they're heading into the winter need some immediate disaster recovery. All this in the context of let's do what we can to get to a Trump administration who'll be better able to deal with these sorts of things. Well, that's even the conversation as we headed off. We left D.C. for the weekend as of Thursday, Friday, and then we come back and find out that this has grown into a massive thing here with topics from trade deals to healthcare issues being involved in this to everything. Now the latest rumors, the RFK Stadium and DC's arrangement with that is included in this. Stuff that has nothing to do with us bridging the gap into a Trump administration, all wrapped up in this. And then the process and how we get here, as many of us remember, we worked really hard as a Congress to get back to a member-driven representative role where members could come here and do the job that they were sent to do, where for so many years this place was run by staff, it was run by the leadership getting together in corners of the government and working through these bills and then bringing them to us and saying take it or leave it. This particular bill has gone the old swampy way of process and has produced, predictably, a swampy result. And so the pay-fors in it are the fuzzy DC math that we had sadly grown accustomed to here in our government, and a corner that we had believed we had turned. And so it's unfortunate to see it come to this point. We've got to have a process that gets members involved earlier in the process so that we can work through these differences. This was a very foreseeable event that was coming. We passed a CR just a few months ago that set this deadline. We were told we were going to take care of it well before we get here, but here we are again, a few days out, and we don't even have text.
As you said again, here we are once again. Obviously, there's the 72-hour rule with a bill text of this magnitude Members need to be given 72 hours. Is there any concern that the Speaker might put a vote out trying to suspend that 72-hour rule, given the timing and the nature of the circumstances that you're facing?
It's very much a big concern. One of the big wins we got, and again, this is all for the American people. They want a Congress that can do the job of representing them. Well, for far too often, we had 1,000-plus page bills presented to members of Congress without the time to read, evaluate, or debate the bills. And unfortunately, that seems to be the priority now, to get out of town, as opposed to get good legislation that we can debate, certainly that we can read. There is a concern that that rule could be broken. That would be very, very unfortunate.
Congressman Michael Cloud, real quick, we have about a minute left. The Speaker talked to reporters a little bit earlier today, and he was asked about criticism to the process and the bill. And one thing that he emphasized to the reporters is that this specifically was not an omnibus. Why don't we take a listen to what Speaker Johnson said earlier today?
This is not an omnibus, okay? This is a small CR that we've had to add things to that were out of our control. These are not man-made disasters. These are things that are that the federal government has an appropriate role to do. So I wish it weren't necessary. I wish we hadn't had record hurricanes in the fall, and I wish our farmers were not in a bind so much that creditors are not able to lend to them anymore.
1 minute, Congressman. What is your reaction to what Speaker Johnson said right there?
Well, I appreciate the fact that it's not an omnibus in the sense of 12 appropriation bills thrown together, but in the sense that this is the typical congressional D.C. Christmas tree, where you have a mission and a task at hand that continues to grow beyond that. It fits in this case. And unfortunately, that's the case as we head into this, where this has grown into something that it wasn't originally intended to do. One of the big things we celebrated just a year and a half ago or so, a couple of years ago, was the fact that we had turned the corner. We were going to do things differently. We were going to have single subject bills that we have the chance to read, and there was going to be a germaneness issue to it. We were going to be able to offer amendments. All those kind of things have been circumvented in this. And again, you talk about the rules. One of the secrets here is we pass the rules of the House at the beginning of the term every week. And every week we come and we say, hey, we're not going to follow those rules. We're going to do different rules. And in this case, it looks like we're going to suspend them altogether.
Congressman Michael Cloud, we appreciate you joining us for a few minutes on One American News to break everything down. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Sure, thank you. God bless you.
Coming up next, Judge Juan Merchan rejects another Trump legal team move. What does this mean for the president-elect's case in New York City? We have an interesting breakdown coming right up next.